Shadows behind closed doors. Vanessa Reynolds stood at the edge of her husband's charity gala, smiling the practiced smile she'd perfected over 8 years of marriage. The grand ballroom of the Harrington estate sparkled with crystal chandeliers and the jewelry of Boston's elite. Her husband, Gregory, head of Harrington Development Group, commanded attention at the center of the room, his booming laugh carrying across the space as he charmed potential investors. "Mrs. Harrington, your husband's philanthropy is truly inspiring," a woman in a midnight blue gown commented, sipping champagne. "And your children are absolutely precious in those photos by the entrance." "Thank you," Vanessa replied warmly. "Emma and Theo are my world." What the woman couldn't see were the bruises hidden beneath Vanessa's long sleeves, not from physical blows, but from Gregory's iron grip when he'd pulled her aside before the event. "Don't embarrass me tonight," he had whispered, his breath hot against her ear. "These people need to see the perfect family. The perfect family." Vanessa almost laughed at the thought as she excused herself and slipped away to the powder room. At 32, the former pediatric nurse had become nothing more than a prop in Gregory Harrington's carefully constructed image. The beautiful wife, the devoted mother, the gracious hostess roles she played while slowly disappearing inside. Locking the bathroom door, Vanessa leaned against the marble counter and took several deep breaths. She pulled out her phone and opened the folder of screenshots, texts from Gregory's personal assistant warning her about his moods, emails to his lawyers about contingency plans should Vanessa ever become difficult, evidence she'd been collecting for months. A soft knock interrupted her thoughts. "Vanessa, Gregory's looking for you." It was Josephine, her sister-in-law, and the only Harrington who had ever shown her genuine kindness. Called, quickly hiding her phone. When she returned to the ballroom, Gregory immediately wrapped an arm around her waist, fingers digging into her hip. "There you are, darling. Thomas was just asking about your children's foundation work." "Children's future is very close to my heart," Vanessa recited, the words hollow in her mouth. The foundation was Gregory's tax shelter, not her passion project, as he claimed later that night. After the guests had departed and the house staff had cleaned up, Vanessa tucked 7-year-old Emma and 4-year-old Theo into bed. Emma, with her mother's auburn hair and curious nature, asked the question Vanessa had been dreading. "Mommy, why was Daddy angry at breakfast?" Vanessa smoothed Emma's hair. "Daddy has a lot on his mind with work. He scared Theo when he yelled," Emma whispered. "I know, sweetheart." Vanessa kissed her daughter's forehead. "Sometimes grown-ups don't handle their feelings well." After the children were asleep, Vanessa retreated to her private sitting room, the one place Gregory rarely entered. She pulled out a small notebook from behind a row of books and added another entry to her growing list of incidents. 8 years ago, Gregory Harrington had seemed like a dream, successful, charming, seemingly devoted. Now she understood it. Had all been calculated, his interest in the young nurse a conquest, her transformation into the perfect society wife his project. Her phone buzzed with a text from Eleanor, her former colleague from Boston Children's Hospital. "How are you holding up? Our position is still open if you're ready." Vanessa stared at the message, heart racing. Eleanor had been offering her a way back into nursing for months, sensing something wasn't right in her friend's marriage. It would mean financial independence, the first step to freedom. Before she could respond, the door swung open. Gregory stood there, his tie loosened, a glass of whiskey in hand. "Who are you texting at this hour?" His voice was calm, which frightened her more than his anger. "Just Eleanor." "Hospital gossip." He extended his hand. "Let me see. Greg, let me see." Each word dropped like a stone. As she reluctantly handed over her phone, Vanessa felt something inside her finally break. This wasn't the life she wanted for herself, and it certainly wasn't what she wanted her children to witness, looking at. Gregory scanning her messages, his face hardening with suspicion. Vanessa made a decision. She would need help, she would need courage, and most of all, she would need a plan. Because the perfect family was nothing but a perfect land. Vanessa Reynolds was finally ready to shatter it. The breaking point: 3 months after the charity gala, Vanessa sat across from Dominic Reyes, in a small cafe 10 miles from the Harrington estate. Rain drummed against the windows, providing a sound barrier that made her feel safer speaking freely. "I didn't know who else to call," Vanessa said, her hands wrapped around a mug of untouched tea. "We haven't spoken since law school graduation." Dominic nodded, his dark eyes studying her with the same intensity she remembered from their constitutional law study group years ago. Now a partner at Reyes and Winter's Family Law, he had built a reputation defending those with everything to lose against opponents with unlimited resources. "Sometimes old friends are the best allies," he replied, sliding a business card across the table. "Especially when your husband has half the lawyers in Boston on retainer." Vanessa glanced around nervously. "Gregory monitors my bank accounts, my calls, even my mileage. If he finds out I'm consulting a divorce attorney—" "This meeting never happened," Dominic assured her. "But Vanessa, from what you've told me, this isn't just controlling behavior anymore. It's escalating." 2 weeks earlier, Gregory had exploded when he discovered Vanessa had updated her nursing license. He'd thrown her laptop against the wall, shattering it inches from where Theo had been playing. When Emma tried to intervene, Gregory had gripped her arm so tightly it left marks. That night, Vanessa had silently photographed the bruise on her daughter's skin while the child slept, adding it to her hidden evidence folder. "I can't leave yet," Vanessa explained. "Gregory's threatening to take the children if I try," he says with his resources and connections. "No judge would give custody to an unemployed mother with mental health issues." Her voice broke. "Issues he's fabricated by having his doctor friends prescribe me anxiety medication I never needed." Dominic leaned forward. "That's why we need to move carefully. Massachusetts is an equitable distribution state, but with his wealth and influence, this will be complicated." He paused. "There's something else troubling you." Vanessa hesitated, then whispered, "It's about Theo." "Gregory isn't." She couldn't finish the sentence. Understanding dawned in Dominic's eyes. "We'll address that when the time comes. For now, I need you to do 3 things. Start documenting everything. Secure your evidence somewhere he can't access it, and prepare an exit strategy for when you and the children need to leave quickly." 2 days later, Vanessa was reorganizing Emma's closet when she discovered a hidden nanny cam disguised as a stuffed animal. That evening, she found another in the kitchen and a third in her bathroom. The realization that Gregory was watching her every move sent ice through her veins. That night, while Gregory worked late, Vanessa made her decision. She packed essential documents, clothes, and the children's favorite toys into 3 small bags she hid in her car trunk beneath a blanket. She transferred the digital evidence to a password-protected cloud account Dominic had helped her create. Then she deleted all traces from her devices. When Gregory returned home near midnight, Vanessa was waiting in the living room. "The children are asleep," she said calmly. "We need to talk." Gregory loosened his tie. "About what?" "I know about the cameras, Greg." His expression didn't change. "Therefore, our protection." "They're to control me," Vanessa countered. "Just like the allowance you give me instead of access to our accounts. Just like isolating me from my friends and family. Just like threatening to take my children." Gregory's mask of civility slipped. "Our children." "And you're becoming hysterical again." "I'm not hysterical. I'm finally seeing clearly." Vanessa stood up. "I'm going back to work at the hospital. I'm reconnecting with my friends. And if you can't accept that, then this marriage is over." The transformation was immediate. Gregory's charm vanished, replaced by cold fury. "You have nothing without me, Vanessa. No money, no social standing. You'd be that desperate little nurse again, scrambling to pay rent." "I'd rather be desperate than imprisoned," she replied. "If you leave, you'll never see Emma and Theo again," he threatened. "No judge will choose a mentally unstable nurse over a respected businessman who can provide every advantage." When Gregory stormed out, slamming the door behind him, Vanessa knew she had less than 24 hours before he implemented whatever contingency plan he'd prepared for this moment. At dawn, while Gregory slept, Vanessa woke Emma and Theo, dressing them quickly. "We're going on an adventure," she whispered, helping Theo with his shoes. "We need to be very quiet, like ninjas." Emma, perceptive beyond her years, searched her mother's face. "Are we leaving, Daddy?" Vanessa nodded. "For a little while." I need you to be brave and help with Theo." They slipped out to the car under the cover of early morning fog. As Vanessa drove away from the estate, she glanced at her children in the rearview mirror. Emma sat stoically, holding her brother's hand. Theo clutched his stuffed dinosaur, eyes wide with confusion. The first text from Gregory came 20 minutes later. "Where are you? And come home now, and we'll forget this happened. Finally, you've made a terrible mistake." Vanessa didn't respond. Instead, she drove to the modest apartment Eleanor had helped her secure under a different name. It was small, with second-hand furniture and none of the luxury her children were accustomed to, but it was safe. That afternoon, she received an email from Gregory's lawyer, the opening salvo, in what promised to be a brutal custody battle. Gregory was requesting emergency temporary custody, claiming Vanessa had kidnapped the children during a mental health crisis. With shaking hands, Vanessa forwarded the email to Dominic. His response was immediate. "Don't panic. Come to the office tomorrow morning. We anticipated this." As Vanessa tucked her exhausted children into their new beds that night, Emma asked the question Vanessa had been dreading. "Are we poor now, Mommy?" Vanessa sat on the edge of the bed. "No, sweetheart. We're rich in the ways that matter. We have each other, we're safe, and we're free." Later, alone in the unfamiliar darkness of her new bedroom, Vanessa allowed herself to cry not from fear or regret, but from the overwhelming relief of having finally broken through the gilded cage that had been closing around her for 8 years. The hardest step was taken. Now came the fight. Paper trails. The offices of Reyes and Winters occupied the 4th floor of a converted textile mill in Cambridge, worlds away from the sleek downtown firms Gregory typically employed. Oh la la. Sunlight streamed through tall windows, illuminating exposed brick walls lined with law books and framed case victories. Vanessa sat in Dominic's office, Emma and Theo quietly coloring at a small table in the corner. The temporary restraining order they'd secured was holding. But Gregory had responded with a barrage of legal maneuvers, emergency custody petitions, claims of parental alienation, and motions questioning Vanessa's mental fitness. "He's using his standard playbook," Dominic explained, spreading documents across his desk. "Overwhelming force, multiple fronts, expensive delays. He wants to exhaust your resources." "I don't have resources," Vanessa reminded him. "Started at the hospital part-time, but that barely covers rent." She glanced at her children. "I can't match his legal firepower." Dominic's colleague, Prisha Sharma, entered with a stack of files. Unlike Dominic's methodical approach, Prisha had a reputation for courtroom fierceness that had earned her the nickname the surgeon for her precise dismantling of opposition arguments. "You don't need to match his firepower," Prisha said. "Need to find his vulnerability. Every case like this has one." "Gregory doesn't have vulnerabilities," Vanessa replied. "He's been preparing for this scenario for years." "Everyone leaves a paper trail," Prisha countered. "Especially controlling men who think they're infallible." The next week, Vanessa divided her time between the hospital, caring for her children, and combing through years of documents she'd managed to bring from the estate. Bank statements, medical records, foundation paperwork, property deeds. Most seemed irrelevant until she found a file labeled Theo's adoption. Her hands trembled as she opened it. Inside were partial documents from a private adoption agency, dated shortly before Theo's birth. Pages confirmed what she'd always known but never officially acknowledged. Gregory wasn't Theo's biological father. Theo had been conceived during a brief separation when Gregory had moved to New York for 6 months, claiming he needed space. During that time, Vanessa had briefly reconnected with an old boyfriend. When she discovered she was pregnant, Gregory had unexpectedly returned, insisting they reconcile. He'd agreed to raise the child as his own with conditions. Vanessa had signed papers, establishing Gregory as Theo's legal father through a step-parent adoption, though they never discussed the arrangement openly afterward. In fact, Gregory had forbidden any mention of Theo's biological origins, insisting the boy was a Harrington in every way that mattered. "This changes everything," Dominic said when Vanessa brought him the file, "but it's incomplete." "Where are the finalized adoption papers?" "I don't know," Vanessa admitted. "Gregory handled all the legal aspects." Prisha tapped her pen against the desk If he completed a legal adoption, there would be court records. If he did, then what? Vanessa asked. Then his claim to paternity could be vulnerable, Dominic explained, especially if he's made representations about being Theo's biological father in legal documents. He began digging deeper. Gregory had listed Theo as his biological son on insurance forms, school registrations, even foundation documents. Yet a thorough search of court records revealed no finalized adoption. Instead, they found something far more damning. Gregory opened a trust for Emma when she was born, Prisha explained, sliding a document across the table. Standard procedure for wealthy families. But look at the language for Theo's trust. The trust established for Theo contained unusual provisions. It would revert to Gregory if the boy was ever determined not to be a natural-born Harrington descendant. The document explicitly stated that any adoption would not qualify for inheritance rights. He's been planning this from the beginning, Vanessa whispered, the realization washing over her. Creating a paper trail to disown Theo if it ever became convenient? Meanwhile, Dominic had been researching Gregory's business dealings. The Harrington Development Group has been buying properties through shell companies in neighborhoods there. Gentrifying, he explained. But I found something odd about your children's foundation, our children's future. Gregory's showcase charity had been accepting donations for programs that didn't exist. Worse, financial records showed the foundation had been purchasing properties that were later flipped to Harrington Development at suspiciously low prices. He's been using a children's charity for money laundering and tax evasion, Prisha concluded. If we expose this, his reputation would be destroyed. Vanessa shook her head. I can't use that. The foundation helps real children too. Exposing this would hurt them. Then we focus on Theo, Dominic decided. Gregory claims to want custody of both children, positioning himself as the devoted father. But his own documents contradict that narrative. That evening, as Vanessa helped her children with dinner in their small apartment, Gregory's latest settlement offer arrived by courier. He would allow Vanessa primary physical custody. She agreed to move back to a property he owned, accepted a severely limited financial settlement, and signed a non-disclosure agreement about their marriage. He's getting desperate, Dominic said when she called him. He knows we're finding things. 2 days later, while reviewing hospital records, Vanessa found the missing piece. During Theo's birth, Gregory had ordered a paternity test without her knowledge. The results, confirming what they already knew, it's been filed in Theo's medical records, along with consent forms Gregory had signed. Most importantly, in those forms, Gregory had acknowledged he was not the biological father, but was assuming parental responsibilities. Yet he had never completed the legal adoption process. He had wanted the appearance of being Theo's father, without the legal commitment to hedge against the future. This is it, Dominic said, carefully documenting the hospital records. He can't claim full parental rights to a child he never legally adopted, while simultaneously planning to disinherit that same child if convenient. As they prepared their courtroom strategy, Vanessa received an unexpected visitor at the hospital. Josephine, Gregory's sister. He's unraveling, Josephine warned, glancing nervously around the hospital cafeteria. I've never seen him like this. He's obsessed with winning, with beating you. Why are you telling me this? Vanessa asked. Because I've watched him control you for years, Josephine replied. And because I have something you might need. She slid a USB drive across the table. Security footage from the estate, including the night he grabbed Emma. As Josephine left, she paused. I always wished I'd had your courage, Vanessa. My marriage may look perfect, but gilded cages come in many designs. That night, reviewing everything they'd gathered, Dominic looked at Vanessa with cautious optimism. You have enough to force a reasonable settlement. But if Gregory refuses, ... Then we go to court, Vanessa finished, and the world sees who, Gregory, Harrington really is. As if on cue, her phone lit up with a text from Gregory. Last chance, Vanessa. Take the offer, or I destroy you. She showed the message to Dominic, who shook his head. He still thinks he holds all the cards. Let him think that, Vanessa replied, a new steadiness in her voice. The truth has always been there, buried in the paper trail he thought no one would ever follow. The courtroom revelations Suffolk County Family Court buzzed with tension on the morning of the custody hearing. Vanessa sat beside Dominic and Prisha at the plaintiff's table, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. Across the aisle, Gregory projected confidence in a perfectly tailored suit, flanked by 3 attorneys from Whitman and Crawford. Boston's most prestigious family law firm, Judge Ramona Hernandez, entered, her reputation for no-nonsense efficiency preceding her. This court will now hear the matter of Harrington v. Reynolds regarding custody of minor children Emma and Theodore Harrington. Gregory's lead attorney, Winston Blackwell, rose first. With practiced precision, he painted Gregory as a devoted father and pillar of the community, while characterizing Vanessa as unstable and vindictive. The narrative was carefully constructed. A troubled woman who had fled with the children during a mental health episode. A father desperate to protect his children and maintain their quality of life. Mr. Harrington has built a stable home environment. With every advantage, Blackwell concluded. Mrs. Harrington, meanwhile, is living in a 2-bedroom apartment, working part-time and relying on daycare. The contrast in what these parents can provide is stark. When Dominic stood, his approach was deliberately different, calm, measured, and focused. Your Honor, this case isn't about luxury versus simplicity. It's about safety versus control. He gestured toward Vanessa. My client didn't flee on a whim. She left because staying had become dangerous for her and her children. Dominic presented the security footage Josephine had provided, showing Gregory grabbing Emma forcefully enough to leave bruises. He submitted photographs of those bruises. Along with documentation of Gregory's escalating controlling behaviors, Gregory's attorneys objected repeatedly, claiming the footage was obtained illegally and the documentation was exaggerated. Judge Hernandez overruled most objections but instructed the court to consider the full context. As the morning progressed, Gregory took the stand, projecting the charismatic persona that had charmed Boston's society for years. I love my children. More than anything, he testified, emotion carefully modulated in his voice. Everything I've built has been for them. Emma and Theo deserve the best life possible, and I can provide that stability and security. During cross-examination, Prisha approached with deceptive gentleness. Mr. Harrington, you've testified that you consider yourself an exceptional father to both Emma and Theodore, correct? Absolutely, Gregory replied confidently. And you've stated that you're seeking full custody of both children because you believe that's in their best interest. Yes. They need their father. Prisha nodded, then changed direction. Mr. Harrington, please examine this document. She handed him the trust paperwork they'd discovered. Can you explain why Theodore's trust contains provisions that would disinherit him if he were ever determined not to be a natural-born Harrington? Color drained from Gregory's face. That's standard legal language. My attorneys advised it. Is it standard to create different inheritance conditions for siblings? Prisha pressed. Objection, Blackwell interjected. Relevance to the custody matter? I'm establishing the plaintiff's true intentions regarding the children, Prisha countered. It speaks directly to best interests. I'll allow it, Judge Hernandez ruled. Continue. Prisha approached with another document. Mr. Harrington, this is Theodore's birth record from Massachusetts General Hospital. Can you explain why you ordered a paternity test the day he was born? Gregory's composed facade began to crack. That was a private medical matter. A private matter in which you confirmed Theodore is not your biological child, correct? Prisha continued relentlessly. Yet you've represented him as your biological son on numerous legal documents, including insurance forms and school registrations. Would you characterize those as accurate statements? He is my son in every way that matters, Gregory insisted, his voice rising. Except inheritance, Prisha noted. And except legal adoption, which you never completed despite signing initial paperwork. Why start an adoption process you never intended to finish, Mr. Harrington? The courtroom fell silent as Gregory struggled to respond. Judge Hernandez leaned forward, her interest piqued. Mr. Harrington, the judge interjected, did you or did you not complete a legal adoption of Theodore? Gregory glanced at his attorneys. I considered him my son. The paperwork seemed a formality. Dominic rose. Your Honor, we have evidence that Mr. Harrington deliberately maintained this legal ambiguity. When it suited him, Theodore was his son. When it didn't as an inheritance, matters Theodore was not. This calculated approach demonstrates that Mr. Harrington views his children as possessions, not people deserving protection and care. Judge Hernandez called for a brief recess. In the hallway, Gregory cornered Vanessa, his voice low and threatening. "You think you've won? This isn't over. I'll appeal. I'll keep fighting until you have nothing left." Dominic stepped between them. "Harrington, this conversation is inappropriate during proceedings." "You stay out of this," Gregory snarled. "This is between me and my wife." Ex-wife, Vanessa corrected quietly. "And you're right, this isn't over. Because after the custody hearing, the IRS might be interested in our children's future's financial arrangements." The color drained from Gregory's face for the second time. "That day, you wouldn't." "I don't want to," Vanessa replied truthfully. "Those programs help real children. But I will if you force my hand." When court resumed, Judge Hernandez addressed both parties. "I've reviewed the evidence presented thus far, and I have concerns about the authenticity of Mr. Harrington's testimony. This court needs clarity on Theodore's legal status before proceeding." Gregory's attorneys requested a consultation with their client. After 15 minutes of intense, whispered conversation, they returned with a changed approach. "Your Honor, my client wishes to propose a settlement," Blackwell announced. "Joint legal custody with primary physical custody to Mrs. Reynolds. Generous visitation for Mr. Harrington and financial support consistent with Massachusetts guidelines." Murmurs rippled through the courtroom at this sudden reversal. "Judge." Hernandez turned to Vanessa and her team. "Ms. Reynolds, your response?" Dominic conferred briefly with Vanessa before standing. "We would consider a settlement with certain non-negotiable conditions. Primary physical custody with Ms. Reynolds. Supervised visitation until Mr. Harrington completes anger management. And full legal adoption of Theodore, if Mr. Harrington wishes. To maintain parental rights." Judge Hernandez nodded. "I'll give you 2 hours to negotiate terms. If you cannot reach agreement, we will continue with testimony, and I will rule accordingly." In a small conference room, the real negotiation unfolded. Gregory, stripped of his public persona, focused on salvaging what he could. "I want regular, unsupervised time with Emma," he insisted. "And I'll provide financial support for Theo, but I'm not adopting him at this point." "Then you have no parental rights to Theo," Dominic stated flatly. "He can't have it both ways anymore." Gregory. As the negotiation progressed, Vanessa watched the man she had once loved transform before her eyes. Without his power over her, Gregory seemed smaller, his charm hollow, his threats empty. When he finally signed the agreement granting Vanessa primary custody of both children, with supervised visitation for Gregory and substantial financial support, she felt no triumph, only relief. Back in the courtroom, Judge Hernandez reviewed the settlement agreement carefully. "This appears equitable, given the circumstances," she noted. "However, I'm troubled by the evidence presented today, Mr. Harrington. This court expects complete compliance with these terms, including the supervision, or EQUIREMENT, Ms. Reynolds. You've demonstrated remarkable courage throughout this process." As they prepared to leave, Josephine approached Vanessa in the corridor. "He'll never forgive either of us," she said quietly. "But you did the right thing." Vanessa watched Gregory exit with his attorneys, his posture rigid with suppressed rage. "It was never about forgiveness," she replied. "It was about truth." Outside the courthouse, rain had given way to tentative sunshine. Dominic stood beside Vanessa on the steps, their shoulders nearly touching. "What happens now?" she asked. "Now you rebuild," he answered simply. "One day at a time." As they descended the courthouse steps together, Vanessa felt something she hadn't experienced in years: the weightlessness of freedom and the quiet strength of having finally reclaimed her voice. Rebuilding from Truth Autumn painted Cambridge in vibrant reds and golds as Vanessa sat on a park bench watching Emma and Theo chase fallen leaves. 6 months had passed since the courthouse settlement, 6 months of adjusting to their new reality. The modest apartment had slowly transformed into a home. Children's artwork covered the refrigerator, bookshelves overflowed with bedtime stories, and a small herb garden thrived on the kitchen windowsill. It wasn't luxurious, but it held something. The Harrington mansion never had genuine laughter. "Mom, look," Theo called, holding up a magnificent red maple leaf, nearly as large as his face. At almost 5, he remained blissfully unaware of the legal battles fought over him. Emma, now 8, understood more than she revealed, often positioning herself as Theo's protector during their supervised visits with Gregory. "Beautiful," Vanessa called back. "That's definitely scrapbook-worthy." She checked her watch 30 minutes until she needed to get the children to Josephine's for the afternoon. Her sister-in-law had become an unexpected ally, hosting the children every Thursday. While Vanessa worked a full hospital shift, her phone buzzed with a text from Dominic. "Court filing today." All good news? Dinner tonight to celebrate? Their professional relationship had gradually evolved over the months. What began as emergency legal consultations had shifted to co-parenting advice, then to friendship, and recently to something neither of them had yet defined. Their dinners, initially focused on legal strategies, now stretched for hours as they discovered shared passions for historical documentaries, obscure jazz musicians, and terrible sci-fi movies. "Yes to dinner," she texted back. "Children with Josephine until 8. As she gathered the children to leave, Vanessa reflected on how far they'd come. Emma had started therapy to process her experiences, slowly recovering her natural exuberance. Theo had blossomed in preschool, his initial separation anxiety fading as routine and stability reinforced his sense of security. Gregory had fought the settlement terms initially, missing scheduled visits and challenging the supervision requirement. But Judge Hernandez had remained firm, and eventually began complying, though his interactions with the children remained stiff and performative. After dropping the children with Josephine, Vanessa headed to Boston Children's Hospital for her shift. She had gradually increased her hours until reaching full-time status 3 months ago, rediscovering her passion for pediatric nursing, the financial independence, while not approaching her former lifestyle, provided something far more valuable: self-determination. "Dr. Jensen needs you in room 412, her colleague mentioned as Vanessa arrived. New admission, 7-year-old with respiratory distress. Vanessa immersed herself in the work she loved, the rhythms of the hospital both familiar and invigorating. Here, her competence was never questioned, her decisions never undermined. Every shift reinforced what she'd begun to rebuild: her professional identity, separate from the role Gregory had confined her to. That evening, Dominic waited for her. At Riviera, a small Mediterranean restaurant they discovered on one of their marathon legal discussions. When she entered, he stood, that now familiar smile warming his features. "You look exhausted," he observed, pulling out her chair. 12-hour shift, she confirmed. "But the good kind of tired. What's this court news?" Dominic slid a folder across the table. "Judge Hernandez has approved our petition. Gregory's visitation will remain supervised for another 6 months, and he's required to complete the full anger management program before any changes will be considered." Relief washed over Vanessa. "Has he complied with the program so far?" "Minimally," Dominic admitted, "which is why the judge extended the requirement. But there's more." He opened the folder to reveal another document. "The financial audit of our children's future is complete. The foundation can continue operating, but under new leadership and with restructured programs." "What about the IRS investigation?" "Gregory paid substantial penalties, but avoided criminal charges by cooperating fully and restructuring the foundation." Dominic's expression turned serious. He's not happy about any of this, Vanessa. "His reputation has taken significant hits. Just ... stay vigilant." Vanessa nodded, understanding the unspoken concern. Gregory had lost control of his narrative, something he'd never experienced before. People whispered about him now, in the same social circles where he'd once reigned. Their conversation shifted as dinner arrived, moving from legal matters to everyday life. Dominic described his latest home renovation disaster, a bathroom remodel gone spectacularly wrong. Vanessa shared stories from the hospital, the small victories and heartbreaks that composed her days. "Emma asked me something difficult last night," Vanessa said as they shared dessert. "She wanted to know if I still loved her father." Dominic's expression remained carefully neutral. What did you tell her? The truth that I loved who I thought he was, but that sometimes people aren't who they seem? And that love should never make you smaller or afraid. She paused. I told her that real love helps you grow. Their eyes met across the table, the unspoken understanding between them deepening. Speaking of growth, Dominic said, I've been offered a visiting professorship at Harvard Law for next semester, family law clinic, teaching students about domestic violence cases. Dominic, that's wonderful, Vanessa exclaimed. You'd be amazing at that. It would mean reducing my caseload, he continued, including yours. Oh, Vanessa absorbed this. Would Prisha take over? She could, he agreed. Or we could acknowledge that your case is essentially maintenance now. The major battles are won, he hesitated, which means I'm no longer your attorney in any meaningful sense. The implication hung between them, delicate and full of possibility. And if you're not my attorney, Vanessa began, then certain ethical considerations no longer apply, he finished. Like whether I can tell you I've been falling in love with you for months. The confession, simple and honest, settled around Vanessa like a warm blanket.
Oh, grand gestures.
No manipulation, just truth offered without expectation. I've been afraid to examine what I feel for you, she admitted. After Gregory, I questioned my judgment, my ability to see people clearly. I understand, Dominic replied. There's no rush, Vanessa. I'm not going anywhere. Later, as they walked along the Charles River before picking up the children, Vanessa stopped to watch the moonlight rippling across the water. I'd like to try, she said quietly. Not rushing, but not hiding from it either. Dominic took her hand, his touch gentle and undemanding. One day at a time. When they arrived at Josephine's townhouse, Emma and Theo rushed to greet them, full of stories about their afternoon adventure to the Science Museum. Watching Dominic kneel to admire Theo's drawing of dinosaurs, Vanessa felt a quiet certainty settle in her chest. This was what healing looked like, not the absence of scars, but the presence of new growth around them. Not forgetting the past, but refusing to let it dictate the future. 3 weeks later, Gregory failed to appear for his scheduled visitation. Instead, his attorney delivered news that he had accepted a position in London and would be relocating. Indefinitely. He would continue financial support but was stepping back from active parenting until the children were older. Vanessa recognized the retreat for what it was, Gregory abandoning what he couldn't control. The children's reactions were telling. Emma expressed relief tinged with complex grief, while Theo, who had never connected deeply with Gregory, simply asked if they could get a puppy now. That night, after the children were asleep, Vanessa sat on her small balcony with Dominic, their shoulders touching as they gazed at the city lights. Are you okay? He asked. I am, she realized, somewhat surprised by the truth of it. The children will need time to process this, especially Emma, but we'll navigate it together. You're remarkable, Dominic said softly. Do you know that? Vanessa shook her head. Not remarkable, just finally free to be myself. As autumn deepened, toward winter, their lives intertwined with increasing ease. Dominic taught Emma chess and helped Theo build elaborate blanket forts. Vanessa attended Dominic's first lecture at Harvard, Sperdude sitting proudly in the back row as he shared their case anonymized but powerful with future advocates. The small apartment eventually gave way to a cozy townhouse closer to the children's school, purchased with Vanessa's carefully saved income and a modest inheritance from her grandmother. Gregory remained in London, his presence in their lives fading to occasional video calls and birthday gifts selected by his assistant. On a snowy December evening 1 year after the court settlement, Vanessa watched as Emma helped Theo hang ornaments. On their Christmas tree, Dominic stood nearby, untangling lights with exaggerated frustration that made the children giggle. This was what healing looked like, not the absence of scars, but the presence of new growth around them. Not forgetting the past, but refusing to let it dictate the future. 3 weeks later, Gregory failed to appear for his scheduled visitation. Instead, his attorney delivered news that he had accepted a position in London and would be relocating indefinitely. He would continue financial support but was stepping back from active parenting until the children were older. Vanessa recognized. The retreat for what it was, Gregory abandoning what he couldn't control. The children's reactions were telling. Emma expressed relief tinged with complex grief, while Theo, who had never connected deeply with Gregory, simply asked if they could get a puppy now. That night, after the children were asleep, Vanessa sat on her small balcony with Dominic, their shoulders touching as they gazed at the city lights. "Are you okay?" he asked. "I am," she realized, somewhat surprised by the truth of it. "The children will need time to process this, especially Emma, but we'll navigate it together." "You're remarkable," Dominic said softly. "Do you know that?" Vanessa shook her head. "Not remarkable. Just finally free to be myself." As autumn deepened toward winter, their lives intertwined with increasing ease. Dominic taught Emma chess and helped Theo build elaborate blanket forts. Vanessa attended Dominic's first lecture at Harvard, sitting proudly in the back row as he shared their case, anonymized but powerful with future advocates. The small apartment eventually gave way to a cozy townhouse closer to the children's school, purchased with Vanessa's carefully saved income and a modest inheritance from her grandmother. Gregory remained in London, his presence in their lives fading to occasional video calls and birthday gifts selected by his assistant. On a snowy December evening 1 year after the court settlement, Vanessa watched as Emma helped Theo hang ornaments on their Christmas tree. Dominic stood nearby, untangling lights with exaggerated frustration that made the children giggle. This wasn't the life she had envisioned when she'd married Gregory all those years ago. It wasn't wrapped in luxury or showcased in society magazines. But as Emma stood on tiptoes to place a star atop the tree, as Theo clapped his hands in delight, as Dominic caught her eye with a smile that held both present joy and future promise, Vanessa recognized it for what it was: life built on truth rather than illusion, on respect rather than control. And in that recognition came the most profound understanding of all. Sometimes the greatest gift wasn't what you gained, but what you had the courage to leave behind. "Perfect," she whispered, more to herself than anyone else, as the tree lights illuminated the faces of those she loved. "Absolutely perfect."